South Sudan faces $1.05 billion lawsuit in East African court, a test for economy, governance, and regional standing. Juba, October 2nd, 2025. South Sudan's fragile economy and regional credibility will face a major test at the end of this month when the East African Court of Justice, EACJ, hears a staggering $1.05 billion lawsuit against the government. The case, filed by South Sudan Supreme Airlines Company Limited and its legal representatives Pan-African Law Chambers LLP, accuses the Ministry of Finance and Planning of failing to honor a February 2025 settlement agreement. The deal acknowledged a debt of more than $1.05 billion owed to the airline, to be repaid in 24 monthly installments of about $4.4 million. According to documents obtained by Radio Tamazuch, the agreement also included a 10% legal fee payable directly to the law firm. Yet, despite repeated demands, the government has made no payments since the deal was signed. Courtroom showdown in Arusha. The matter, filed as reference number 16 of 2025, will be heard on October 30th by a 5-judge bench in Arusha, Tanzania. South Sudan's Attorney General is named as the respondent. Court records reveal that the Ministry of Justice failed to respond within the legally required 45 days after being served in April. The registrar's notice warns that if Juba does not appear, the court will proceed in absentia and issue binding orders. For South Sudan, the stakes are enormous. Should the ruling go against it, the government may face regional enforcement measures or asset seizures, a crippling blow to an economy already in freefall. Debt tied to military services. A source familiar with the deal said the debt originated from services the airline provided to the South Sudanese Army, although details remain murky. South Sudan Supreme Airlines, owned by prominent businessman I.E. Duong I.E., has assembled a legal team of 19 lawyers led by senior counsel Wani Santino Jada, who declared his side fully prepared for the hearing. Once the ruling is made, we will determine how my client can get his rights, Wani said in remarks to Radio Tamazuch. From zero debt to a debt trap. When South Sudan gained independence in 2011, it inherited no sovereign debt, a rare advantage for a new state. But years of civil war, corruption, and dependence on oil-backed loans have since buried the country under billions in liabilities. A recent United Nations report found that since 2018, South Sudan has largely stopped repaying loans from international lenders. Creditors now include global banks, commodity traders, and private firms, all pursuing legal claims. Regional and political fallout. Analysts say the case could strain South Sudan's already fragile standing in the East African Community, EAC, which it joined in 2016. By allegedly breaching principles of rule of law, accountability, and good governance, Juba risks deepening mistrust within the bloc. Economically, the lawsuit compounds a worsening crisis. Civil servants go unpaid for months. The currency continues to plummet, and oil revenues, which account for over 90% of government income, are increasingly mortgaged in advance to financiers. Politically, the trial comes at a time of heightened instability. The ongoing treason case against First Vice President Riek Machar and his allies has already drawn accusations of judicial bias and authoritarian overreach. Now, a billion-dollar external case threatens to expose the government's financial vulnerability to international scrutiny. What's next? If the EACJ rules against South Sudan and the government still refuses to pay, the airline's lawyers could seek enforcement measures across East Africa, including the seizure of state assets abroad. Such a scenario would not only damage the country's creditworthiness, but also humiliate a government that has long struggled to project sovereignty and financial discipline. For businessman I.E. Duong and his legal team, October 30th represents a chance to secure accountability. For South Sudan, it may be the moment the country's debt crisis, governance failures, and regional obligations converge in one courtroom drama. Why the SPLM/AIO cannot be liable for the actions of the White Army. The statement made by General Gabriel Dope Lamb during trial on August 1, 2025, that the White Army is affiliated to the SPLM/AIO has been misunderstood by some as an admission of culpability in the Nasir incident. However, from a legal and factual perspective, such interpretation is misplaced. Criminal law requires strict proof of every element of an alleged offense, beyond reasonable doubt, and mere affiliation does not amount to command or responsibility. 1. Legal principles of criminal liability. The burden of proof lies squarely with the prosecution throughout trial. For conspiracy or inchoate offenses, the same standard applies. The prosecution must establish beyond reasonable doubt that the accused planned, ordered, or coordinated the acts in question. Affiliation or association is insufficient to create liability unless direct evidence of command, order, or participation is shown. 2. The nature of the White Army in Nasir County. The White Army in Nasir was not under SPLM/ADO command, but a community self-defense force formed due to government failure to protect civilians. Their actions were motivated by long-standing grievances with SSPDF, not SPLM/ADO directives. Testimonies, such as from Major Michael Cherouai Abier, confirm the clashes were sparked by demands for deployment of necessary unified forces, not IO mobilization. 3. Evidence of independence from SPLM/ADO. Communities explicitly displayed placards demanding unified forces, underscoring the grassroots nature of the conflict. Survivors confirm the White Army did not target civilians tribally but disarmed and released non-combatants. Dr. Riek Machar and IO leadership actually sought to de-escalate tensions by proposing community dialogue committees efforts, rejected by SPLMIG. 4. Statements from SPLMIG figures. Bol Mel's call on Minister Pyut Kong to intervene with his community. February 12, 2025. Implicitly acknowledged the White Army's independence from IO command structures. If IO command had been in charge, Bol Mel could have appealed directly to General Duplam or Dr. Machar in their military roles. 5. The separate command structure of the White Army. The White Army is an independent socio-military organization with its own hierarchy. Unless prosecution can present documentary evidence, operational orders, or insider witnesses showing IO coordination, liability cannot attach under command responsibility doctrine. 6. Political engineering of the Nasir incident. The events were exploited by SPLMIG and SSPDF as part of a broader strategy, dubbed the Soft Revolution. This was evidenced by Major General Lul Rue's cryptic Facebook post. Soft Revolution is moving at breathtaking speed. Stay tuned. Arrests of Dr. Machar, General Duplam, and Honorable Pyut Kong, alongside bombardment of IO cantonments, reveal a political plot rather than a neutral criminal prosecution. 7. Political conditions placed on Dr. Machar. Bol Mel's demands that Dr. Machar a. renounce his title as Commander-in-Chief of SPLAIO, and b. surrender IO forces to SSPDF, underscore the political, not criminal, nature of the case. 8. Ethnic profiling and weaponization of the incident. The Nasir clashes were used to profile newer communities as hostile and to suppress IO's national spread by confining it to newer strongholds. Offices of SPLMIO in Bahr el Ghazal and Equatoria were closed, while the government promoted Parquel's D-Link group as a pliant faction. 9. Double standards in command responsibility. Just as SPLMIG leaders are not held criminally accountable for Jelwang, Mathiang, Inier, Red Belt, or other tribal militias, SPLM/AJO cannot legally be liable for White Army actions. The doctrine of command responsibility requires effective control and causal linkage, neither of which exists here. Conclusion: the Nasir incident was a community-driven defense action manipulated politically by SPLMIG and its security apparatus to weaken SPLM/AIO, undermine the revitalized peace agreement, and eliminate Dr. Riek Machar from political life. Even if affiliation exists between IO and White Army, it does not create liability without direct operational control. Thus, prosecution's attempt to hold IO leaders criminally responsible is legally unsound and politically motivated. South Sudan Chief Justice reinstates 2 lawyers in Machar trial. South Sudan's Chief Justice, Dr. Benjamin Bol Mel, has granted special permission for 2 previously barred lawyers to rejoin the defense team of suspended First Vice President Riek Machar and 7 co-accused in a high-profile treason trial. The 2 lawyers, Deng John Deng and Warnyang Kir Warnyang, had been ejected earlier this week after the prosecution successfully challenged their practicing licenses. Prosecutor Dr. Sabri Wani Ladu argued that the advocates had failed to renew their licenses by the January 2025 deadline, citing the country's Advocate Act of 2013 and presenting a bar council list that omitted their names. Presiding Judge James Alala Deng had ruled that only the Chief Justice could authorize such advocates to appear before the court. On Tuesday, Dr. Bach exercised this discretion under Section 182 of the South Sudan Code of Criminal Procedure Act, 2008, issuing special leave for the two lawyers to participate in criminal case number 1533 of 2025. With their reinstatement, the defense team, led by Dr. Jerry Raimondo Legg, a former Court of Appeal judge and law professor at the University of Juba, now includes 6 members: Koor Lul Koor, Anis Tum Augustino, Regina Akrib Deng, alongside Deng and Warren Yang. The Special Trial Court, established on September 1, 2025, is presided over by a 3-judge Supreme Court panel comprising Justice James Alala Deng, Chair, Justice Stephen Simon Bijingwa, and Justice Isaac Per Majak. Proceedings are being held at Juba's Freedom Hall. Machar, 73, and 7 allies, Pute Kong Chul, 40, Mampal Duer, 37, Gatwech Lam Puch, 66, Lieutenant General Gabriel Dup Lam, 53, Camilo Gatmichael, 47, Mating Yak Riek, 45, and Dominic Gatgok Riek, 27, face charges of treason, crimes against humanity, terrorism, mass murder, and destruction of property. The case stems from March 2025 attacks on an army base in Nasir County, in which a government general and dozens of soldiers were killed. Authorities accused Machar's SPLM/AJO and an allied militia known as the White Army of carrying out the assaults. The court is scheduled to resume on Friday, October 3, when the lead investigator will read statements from 4 of the accused, including Machar himself. Power and influence. Dr. Benjamin Bol Mel's shadow over Machar's trial. Behind the high-profile trial of suspended First Vice President Dr. Riek Machar Tini, questions continue to swirl over the role of powerful elites in South Sudan's justice system. Sources close to the proceedings allege that Dr. Benjamin Bol Mel, a prominent businessman and influential figure tied to the Jing Council of Elders, JC, played a central role in pushing for Machar's arrest earlier this year. Critics argue that Bol Mel, often seen as a behind-the-scenes power broker, is seeking to secure his legacy within the JC by ensuring Machar's political downfall. Observers say the move reflects deeper divisions within South Sudan's ruling establishment. The trial is less about law and more about rewriting history. One political analyst told reporters, suggesting that Machar's narrative as a liberation leader threatens the dominant account favored by the JC. In court, proceedings have faced repeated interruptions. Delays, including an expected adjournment today, October 15, despite earlier promises to conclude, have fueled speculation that the trial is being manipulated to drag on indefinitely. Some opposition supporters have even drawn biblical parallels, comparing Bol Mel's alleged role in Machar's arrest to Jesus arresting Riek, a symbolic expression of betrayal and persecution. As the special court drags forward, many South Sudanese wait anxiously to see whether justice will be delivered or whether political influence will once again overshadow the rule of law. The Hidden Hand, Dr. Benjamin Bol Mel and the Power Struggle Behind Machar's Trial, by Eagle View. October 15, 2025. Juba, when South Sudan suspended. First Vice President Dr. Riek Machar Tini was arrested earlier this year. Few names emerged as quickly in political whispers as that of Dr. Benjamin Bol Mel. 2. Many in Juba's corridors of power. Bol Mel is not merely a businessman, but a kingmaker, and now, allegedly, a shadowy player in the trial that could define South Sudan's political future. A business mogul turned power broker. Bol Mel's story begins in the years before South Sudan's independence. As a wealthy entrepreneur, he founded Africa Resource Corporation, ARC, also known as ABMC, a sprawling conglomerate that won lucrative contracts in road construction, oilfield logistics, and infrastructure. During the Liberation War, Bol Mel reportedly used his financial networks to support the SPLM's armed struggle. After independence in 2011, Those connections blossomed into preferential access to government contracts, cementing his reputation as one of the richest men in South Sudan. His close ties with the presidency made him indispensable. In Juba's political economy, Bol Mel was the banker of the revolution, a former SPLA commander told this reporter. After independence, he became the banker of the state, the Jing Council of Elders, and the politics of history. Bol Mel's influence extends beyond business. He is a central patron of the Jing Council of Elders, JC, a powerful advisory body of senior Dinka figures. The JC has long sought to frame South Sudan's post-war political narrative in ways that protect Dinka dominance and limit the influence of rivals like Machar. Observers say Bol Mel, who funds many JC activities, sees Machar's legacy as a direct threat to the history the council wants written. Machar has his own story of sacrifice and struggle, explained a Juba-based political analyst. If his version takes hold, it dilutes the centrality of the Dinka elite narrative. That's why the JC, and Bol Mel in particular, cannot allow it. Allegations of orchestrating Machar's arrest. In March 2025, government forces detained Machar following attacks in Nasir County that killed a general and dozens of soldiers. While the state accused Machar's SPLM/AJO and the White Army of orchestrating the assault, opposition leaders insist the arrest was politically engineered. They point fingers at Bol Mel, accusing him of pressuring both the presidency and judiciary to ensure Machar's removal. He wanted Machar out of the picture so history would remember the JC's version, not Machar's. One opposition MP told Radio Tamazuj under anonymity. Court insiders also suggest Bol Mel has played a role in delaying proceedings, including the much-anticipated adjournment today, October 15th, when the trial was supposed to conclude. Critics say the stalling is strategic, to exhaust Machar politically, to weaken his legal defense, and to keep him isolated from his supporters. The empire of ABMC, Bol Mel's company ABMC/ARC, remains at the center of his influence. It controls major road construction projects across South Sudan, many of which are financed through opaque government contracts. Watchdog groups, including the Sentry, have previously flagged ABMC as an example of how South Sudan's elite profit from state resources while services for ordinary citizens collapse. The firm's control of logistics in oil-producing states also ties Bol Mel directly to the country's lifeline industry. He who controls roads and oil logistics controls Juba's economy, said a civil society activist. That is Bol Mel. Allies and enemies. Bol Mel's closeness to President Salva Kiir Mayardit has long been an open secret. Kiir relies on Bol Mel's financial muscle for political campaigns and patronage networks, while Bol Mel, in turn, benefits from Kiir's protection against scrutiny. But his enemies are growing. Within the SPLM, some accuse him of monopolizing state resources and using tribal patronage to enrich a small circle. For Machar's supporters, Bol Mel has become the symbol of elite manipulation, a man who would rather see history rewritten than share credit for South Sudan's struggle. The larger struggle, the Machar trial, formerly about charges of treason and mass violence, has become much more a struggle over history, legacy, and power. Whether or not Machar is convicted, analysts say the fingerprints of Bol Mel and the JC will remain on the process. For many South Sudanese, this trial will not be remembered for its verdict, but for what it revealed about who really governs the nation, the law, or the men behind it. Commentary. A tycoon joins the game at halftime. A business tycoon enters a stadium at halftime. The first half has already been played, goals scored, fouls committed, and momentum established. He sits down, with no idea which team will ultimately win, yet he insists on dictating the outcome. This is what is happening in South Sudan today with Dr. Riek Machar's trial. The courtroom drama has been shaped from the beginning by political agendas, testimonies, and maneuverings beyond the reach of the accused or their defense lawyers. Now, figures with wealth and influence, business moguls and political financiers, step in midway, trying to decide the verdict as if they can rewrite the match report. But justice, like football, is not a game that can be reset at halftime. The truth of what happened in Nasir County in March 2025, the circumstances of Machar's arrest, And the credibility of the court process cannot simply be bought or manipulated once the whistle has blown. For many South Sudanese, the trial has already revealed its deeper nature, a contest not of law, but of power. And like the Tycoon at halftime, those intervening now may find that despite their influence, history will not let them choose the winner.